So today's kind of an interesting story. So, let me take you back a couple of years. I'm going to take you back to 2005. December 2nd, 2005 will go down in infamy. Not only is it my brother's birthday, but that was the Pearl Harbor of my finances. Yeah. So, like, it was getting bombed from every direction and things got sunk, right? There was smoking carnage everywhere. And it was one of those things you stand back and you have these times in life and these moments in life when you think you made the right decision. And then you have that moment when you realize it was really not the right decision. Fortunately for me, it took me only about a month and a half, 2 months to figure out that I'd made the wrong decision by moving my family from Detroit, Michigan to Tampa, Florida. See, in 1999, I started a countertop company making countertops out of concrete. You guys ever seen that? Yeah, well, back in 99, when I told people I had a concrete countertop company, the question that came out of their mouth was like, what do you mean, like the sidewalk? And I'm like, yeah, that's what we're doing. We're installing sidewalks in your kitchen. That sounds great. You just draw on it with chalk when you're bored. So I would show them a sample and they're like, that's not concrete. And I was like, exactly, right? So I was selling concrete countertops at $100 a square foot. Granite was 60 at the time. So it was super high-end product and I had a great time with it. There's two things that are really important to know about concrete. Number one, it gets hard fast. And number two, stupid heavy. So when you start getting like 3-4 years into that business and I start going, well, like, I don't really want to be doing this the rest of my life. So I decided I would sell the company. And that's when I learned one of my most valuable business lessons ever. When you get into business, you have to have an exit plan when you get into the business, because if you don't get into the business with an exit plan, you're not going to build the business with the exit in mind, and then you don't have yourself set up for an exit. So I built this company. The company did really well. I made good money. My employees did really well. My employees got paid good money. And then I go to sell the company and I realize that the whole value of the company is tied to me. If you take me out of the company value really doesn't have that much value. So I ended up selling that company, got that transition done, and of course didn't have the money to retire. So I was like, well, I got to do something with my life. And I had been in kitchen and bath business, and I'd done some remodels, and I'd done some flips, and I bought my first house when I was like 24. It was a piece of crap, $57,500, and did a little remod to it. And then I bought another house and did a little remod to it. So I buy something, fix it up, and live in it, right? And in the process of doing that, I said, well, I know more about houses than most people after being in the kitchen bath business and the countertop business. I should become a real estate agent. So I get my real estate license and I get into the business and I do the smart thing. I'm a young business guy, right? I do this, what I think is a smart thing, and I go to the number one guy in the office. It's a Real Estate One office, Livonia, Michigan. And I grabbed the number one guy and I said, hey, I'm Russ, I'm new. I'd like to take you to lunch and ask you some questions. Would you be cool with that? And the dude looked at me and said something like, gotta eat. I'll take that as yes. So I went to lunch with the guy and I asked him a really simple question. If you were me, what would you do? And he looked me square in the eye and he said, I'd get out of the business. Wow, this is awesome, right? I'm like, this guy, what? Like, I asked the wrong guy, right? So then I was like, I'm going to grab the number two guy, because the number two guy, right, maybe this guy's not as big of a jerk. I'm like, hey, I'm Russ, I'm a new guy, and I'd like to take you out to lunch and just ask you a couple questions. Would you be willing to do that? And he's like, absolutely, super nice, absolutely. And I sit down with lunch and I said, first question, it's like, if you were me, what would you do? And he looked at me deadpan and he goes, I'd get out of the business. I'm like, wow, I'm not even successful yet, and I'm already so threatening to these guys that they want me to get out of the business because they obviously don't want to compete with this, right? Of course, I didn't have this at the time, but I'm like, obviously something's going on here. Well, it turns out it's like, okay, explain to me why. And they explained to me that Ford Motor Company had laid off 40,000 mid-level managers, GM had laid off 40,000 mid-level managers, and Chrysler, not to be left out, decided to lay off 30,000 mid-level managers. They're all in the Detroit market. So you've got 110 mid-level managers, all making between $80,000 and $110,000, $120,000 a year, and they're all unemployed. Some of them trickled down into the tier one companies and picked up other things like the companies that make dashboards that go in cars. They're tier one suppliers, major part suppliers. Some of those guys infilled a little bit, and then they realized they're not going to make it either, and they laid people off. So what happened is your typical house in the $3 and $4 and $5 and $600,000 price range, which is what these people typically lived in and could afford, those started to go down into the 400s and the 300s and the 200s, and the 300s, 200s, and 100s went down to the 200 and 100 and sub 50. So you take your typical house, like the house that I sold in 2005 when we left. I sold that house for $185,000. 3 years later, it was worth 40. Yeah. Okay. So now that you explained that, it makes more sense why they're saying to me what they said to me. So of course, that's now in hindsight, I can tell you that's what happened, but they just knew something wasn't right and the market was starting to really soften there. And they were just basically saying, just don't do it here. So my wife's cousin comes into town. His name's Rob Hilliker. He's one of my favorite people in the world. If you look at that chart, where they got the Cro-Magnon man over here and then upright human here, he's the third one from the left. His words, not mine. Big old goony dude, and he's like, oh, Russ, and that's Rob, right? And he's one of the most amazing guys in the world. Well, he's a broker of a real estate office in Tampa, Florida. He comes into town for a family event, and we're doing some graduation party for something or other, and he comes over, and he's like, hey, Russ, I heard you got into real estate. I'm like, yeah. He's like, how's it going? I'm like, not so great. And he's like, well, what's the problem? I was like, this is what's going on in the market here, and I kind of wish I'd known that before I'd invested 6 months of my life to get into doing this. And he goes, Russ, man, you got to come down to Tampa. Dude, an idiot can make $100,000 a year in Tampa. And I'm sitting there going, like, I'm the biggest idiot I know. Let's do this, right? Okay. So I moved my family down to Tampa, Florida, and I'm in Tampa, Florida in December, and I get into the office and I have some conversations with some people, and then January comes around, I'm getting to know some people, and I'm looking at these people, I'm like, what's going on? I'm like, what's going on? You ever walk into a party and nobody's saying anything to anybody? Is that awkward, weird silence, like something's going on, but I don't know what's going on, but something's going on, and then you're like, is it me? Like, check my... Something's not right, okay? And that was what was going on in January. And by February, I started realizing that they were going from selling houses it went on the market immediately. And in January, houses were sitting on the market. And in February, houses were sitting on the market. So in the end of 2005, Katrina hit, did a massive amount of devastation across the Gulf Coast. And what happened is Tampa, Florida's on that coast area. While they didn't get hit, the investors got scared. Right? And you got to remember 2002, 3, 4, 5, the market was really weird. And the people in the market were starting to do some strange stuff. And they were taking money out of their house in New Jersey. And they're taking $300,000 equity and buying a house in Florida that they couldn't afford. Right? And then the mortgage people were amazing. Right? Brad, mortgage guy, was probably out there back in the day. Do you remember the stated income, stated doc loans? Yeah. So, yeah, that's like stated income, stated doc. You guys know what that means? That means nobody saw shit, and you still got a house, okay? So that stuff was starting to come to roost, right? So I get into 2006, and the market is absolutely collapsing in Tampa. If you got a listing, you're in trouble because it's going to sit. You got a buyer, that buyer's like, I'm not buying anything. Something's going on here, right? So the market completely stopped. So by fast forward a couple of years, going to mid of January of 2008, you've got 13,000 realtors in the market in Tampa. Just in the Tampa side of the market, not St. Petersburg, 13,000 realtors and 800 total closings for the whole month. Yeah. How many of you guys think this is a bad market? Yeah, I've seen some stuff, okay? So it's a matter of perspective, and here's the thing that was interesting. There are still people that make it in those markets, right? And the people that said, I'm not going to give up, I'm going to find a way, those people found a way. And the people that said, I'm not going to give up, I'm going to find a way, they found the way and they started taking market share. And you know what? A lot of those people that put their heads down, they become the number one agents, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, top 100 agents in each market. Those are the people that put their heads down. In this market right now, this is very, very different. The problem is we've got people that are still gun shy from back in 2006, 7, and 8. So I want to make sure you guys understand the facts. And when I went from being broke off my butt to being the number one agent in the office in July of 2007, there was only a couple things that I was doing. Okay, by the way, July 2007, it was interesting. Went from no experience to having some experience. And I got the award for being the top agent in the office. My wife's cousin, Robbie, goes, oh, Russ, you're number one agent in the office, right? I'm like, that's awesome. And he hands me this little certificate piece of paper, and it says, top agent for month of July, right? And I go home with this thing, and I look at it, and I go over to my wife. I'm like, honey, look, I'm the number one agent in the office for the month of July. And she looked at me, and I looked at her, and she looked at me, and I looked at her. And this isn't what she said, but this is what she said. You're number one. What the hell's everybody else making? Because we're broke. Okay? So what I found is that there were certain things that I was doing that were important, and there were certain things that I was doing that was different. There were certain things I was doing that nobody else in the office was doing and nobody else in the market was doing, and that was my advantage at the time. And what I found is that the more things I did that were fun, the more people I met doing things that were fun, and the more business I got. What little business there was all from people that I was meeting doing things that I enjoyed. So I started to double down on that, and I started to build my business around that. I've never paid for leads. Still won't, right? Build sphere of influence business with doing things with people that I know, like, and trust. I did business with people that I golf with, and I did business with people that I rode a mountain bike with. So when I start teaching and training agents, they're like, well, what do I do, Russ? I'm like, go out and have more fun. And they're like, well, that doesn't sound really productive. I said, well, it does, because you're going out and having fun with people that are doing the same thing that you're doing, which means you kind of have a connection, right? Like, do you know a bunch of mountain bikers? Do you know the mountain biking lingo? Do you know, like, if you pull up to a tree and you're like newer as a mountain biker and you try to get off and your feet are actually stuck to the pedals on purpose, and if you don't do it just right and go click this way, that you end up face plant on the ground? Okay, so if you haven't been a mountain biker, you don't even understand, like, one of the basic first experiences that everybody has, and you look at that person, you're like, everybody does that when they're brand new as a mountain biker. They stop and just fall over, right? There's a bond in that, right? There's a bond in having a common experience. So what you got to start thinking is, how do I change my life and change my business so that I start building relationships and start building these common experiences? Because there's stuff that you and I have that are in common, right? And you find those connections. And the fun part is like, the mountain biking people, there's something wrong with all of them. They're all messed up, but they're all messed up a little bit like me, right? So what happens is you have these commonalities, and we've got to start saying, okay, well, wait a second. Can I double down on that, right? Brad, I was talking to Brad, mortgage guy over here earlier, and I'm going to steal my own joke first, because he's going to borrow it a bunch, and then he's going to give me credit for it twice, and then he's going to own it, right? I said, man, if you guys ever start some subsidiary businesses, you got to start a business called the Woods, the Pond, and the Rough. I said, because people like me, I can't hit the freaking fairway. So you just call the other company Shanker's Golf, right? Or Shanker's Mortgage, okay? For all those people that can't hit the fairway, we got you. Okay, so with that said, you got to find your way. So like people at golf, there's something to that, right? You guys know any pickleball people? Dude, I want to start a whole movement called Pickleheads, and start like a whole t-shirt line and hats, Pickleheads, and for the pickleball. There's something wrong with the pickleball people. All of them have the same something wrong about them, right? So think about finding your tribe. Find your tribe, find your vibe, right? So you got to start thinking, how do I find my tribe? Well, what do I like to do? And then when I'm doing it, there's these interactions that happen all the time when you're out doing stuff, and I'm out doing stuff, and I'm riding a mountain bike, and I had the same question asked all the time. And I'm going to talk to you guys about how to convert that into real business, and convert that into real connections. And then take those connections and leverage those connections so that you have business coming to you. It also sets you up where you have your own tribe and your own people. And listen, she's awesome, she's amazing, but she's not going to mess with your people, and your people aren't going to mess with her, because that's your tribe. You can know a bunch of the same people, and some people are going to like you, and some people are like her. That's fine, right? Not everybody likes me. Hurts my feelings every time, but not everybody likes me, right? Because my style, my flavor, sometimes some people are like, you just talk too fast. Okay, fine, got it. Then find somebody to talk slower. I'll be done with the conversation an hour before you clowns even get going, right? So find your people and find your tribe, and find that flavor that works for you, right? So one of the things that you guys need to know now is this market is different. Yes? How many of you have been in business for more than 10 years? Okay, a couple of you guys. So how many of you guys have been in business more like 18 to 20? Okay, yeah. So the rest of you guys really haven't been through the stuff from before. And the problem is, we're sitting down with a lot of customers right now, and sitting down with a lot of people, and you have a drink, and they're like, well, what if this crashes? Okay, so I want to make sure you guys understand what's going on in the market from a national platform, from a national standpoint, because here's the thing. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And fear comes from unknown, right? Has anybody ever laid in a bed, or have children that lay in a bed and they're scared of what's under the bed? tell me everybody had that experience at one. Like guys are not going to admit it. Like, no, dude, there was times I was like, I think there's something under my bed, right? The more you lay there and the more you ignore it, the worse it gets. Yes? Does it get better if you don't look? No. But as soon as you flip the lights on and look, that fear goes away. Okay, so what I want to do is flip the lights on and let you guys take a peek at what's really going on so you understand what's really going on. And there's a lot of people in this real estate business, and guys, I do this all the time, all over the country. Flew 87,000 miles last year. Pretty cool. Yeah, that's awesome. That's why my butt's flat. Been doing squats, trying to puff it back up, but spent a lot of time in airplanes. I spent a lot of time in rooms, and everybody across the country, you guys are very normal. It's a very common thing. It's like they don't understand what's really going on in the market. And when they don't understand what's really going on in the market, they have problems communicating with people and being able to look at that person and say, that's actually not what's happening, and here's why. Let me explain it to you. And then you explain it to them, and you show them, and they go, oh, okay. I'm sitting in a room last week, and the lady's like, I'm just going to wait it out. It's going to come back. And I'm like, you're going to be waiting a while. And she's like, no, I think it's going to come back. I'm like, no, it's not. Not like you think it is, not like you say it is, and not what you think you need to have it do. You need to change the way you do your business, because the current reality of the way things are is actually different than what you think. But as long as you know, now that I know, when I know there's a crosswind, I hit the ball more that way, right? When if there's a crosswind coming from this way, I hit the ball more that way, because I know that crosswind is going to change the trajectory of my ball. Okay, so let me show you guys what's going on in the market here. Okay, here, number one, average American moves, typical, every 6.1 years. Okay, normally when I ask people, they're like, I don't know, like 3, 6, 4, 7, 9, 42, hike. Okay, typical real estate deal. You're going to have your typical people in your market, in your sphere. They move every 6 years. Okay, currently we're running closer to 10. 2022. I don't have the 2023 stat yet, so we're running closer to 10. So on average, the average person is moving 4 years longer, which means instead of having to stay in communication with that person for 6 years, you got to stay in communication with that person for 10 years. Does that change the way you start thinking of how you're doing your business? Yeah. So now I got to start thinking, okay, number one, should I be doing follow-up with my people all the time, consistently, making sure I'm adding value on a monthly basis? Yeah, right? And then does that mean I have to do that for a lot longer now? Yeah. So people are like, well, I'll wait. So when you look at just that statistic alone, that means if you're typically doing 20 sales in a year, from your sphere of influence, from normal people doing the normal flow and the normal move, those people are actually going a lot longer, which means you've got typically less. So even if everything else is equal and your credibility is equal and what you're doing is equal, you're going to do somewhere in the range of, I don't know, 25 or 30% less business just because less people are moving in general. So what that means is now I can add some people to my sphere of influence to offset that. So if you want to do the same amount of sales you did the year before, I just need more people in my sphere that I'm adding value to so that I can get the same results. So in order for me to get 20 this year, I need to have more people in my sphere. That's just the way it is. So people are like, well, Russ, I don't understand. How am I going to get my business back to what it was last year and the year before? Super, super simple, guys. And I'll show you exactly how to do that. Cool? Okay, so that's one piece of information. Interesting stuff to know. Okay, so here's a fun one. Single family housing units completed. Okay, if you look at the annual average of housing completed, it's substantially higher than what we've had since going into 2000. So guys, look at this, 2005. When did I get into business? 2005. They should have like a little stick figure laying right here with the little X's over their eyes. That was me. Okay. So what's happening is housing building dropped off a ton, right? So how many years? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years of less than normal house building going on. So what does that do to supply of homes? Okay, so a lot of people are like, well, Russ, the supply of homes is down, and it's like this magical unicorn fart, and nobody knows where it came from. And the reality is, guys, like this is where it came from. They stopped building houses in 2006, 7, and 8. And then they slowly ramp back up. And then, of course, now you got COVID that hits and the prices go through the roof. And some of the builders are like, I can't play on this. My margins are only $50,000 on a house and it costs me $70,000 more to build a house now, which means I'm negative 20. So how many more houses do you want to build if you're losing 20 grand on each one? Okay, I'm a barber. I cut hair. I lose $5 on every haircut. How many more haircuts do you want to do? Yeah. So you guys ever heard this phrase? It's like, we lose money on every deal, but we make up for it in volume. It doesn't work like that, right? Okay, so the best thing you can do if you're losing money on every haircut is stop cutting hair or raise your prices. Okay, so with this being said, you got to say, okay, well, where is this coming from? Well, this is coming from single family housing completed. It's down. Okay, so it makes plenty of sense, right? So here's one of the fun ones. When you get Realtor.com, Bank of America, Freddie Mac, Morgan Stanley, John Burns, and Moody's all agreeing on anything, you're on to something. Okay, because these guys are usually all over the place in different things. So I'm going to say, how many houses short are we in the U.S. currently? Realtor.com probably has the best bead on that since they actually are in the real estate business. The other ones are just investment firms that are taking secondhand and thirdhand information, including stuff from Realtor.com. And of course, Bank of America is going to be the most aggressive on thing. But like these guys down on the bottom, they're not going to commit to a real number. And the reason they don't want to commit to a real number is because if they're wrong, it ruins their credibility. Realtor.com is like, here's the stat. These guys are like, well, that's a stat, but let's just make sure we don't say 5 because if it ends up being 4 and we said 5, we're going to look bad. So I'm going to say 1.6, and if it turns out to be 5, I'll be fine. Okay, so that's the way these guys communicate. So when we're looking at information in the market and consumers are looking at information in the market, we're finding that there's a massive disconnect between what they're hearing and what's actually going on and what they're seeing. Do you guys think our customers are really well informed as to what's going on? No. Do you think our realtors in this business are really informed on what's going on? No. No. So who should be telling the consumers what's going on? Wait a minute. Let me ask a question a little different. If I was able to be a resource for this information to a large volume of people, who do you think they'd want to do business with? Huh. So should you guys become the resource for this information to be telling this story instead of your customers finding it out from other people and finding out not only bad information, but incorrect information? And the problem is that they see this and they don't know what it means. And if they don't know what it means, then they interpret it. And do they normally interpret it in a really sunny, pushing up daisies, everything's fine? No, right? So in the absence of information, a lot of people will take their brain and they throw it in the garbage can and they roll it around a little bit and then they put it back in their head and they're like, okay, that's great. When they let their mind wander, it doesn't usually wander in good ways, right? If you're going to let your mind wander, let it wander down positive paths. Life lesson, okay? So guys, I want you to know this information so well that you can sit down with people and say, okay, here's facts of what's going on. See, because I can tell you until I'm blue in the face. And you're going to be like, okay, cool. If you believe me and I have enough credibility that you believe me, we're good. But I don't want to have to rely on my credibility and being believable. I want to show them, not tell them. Right? You heard what Nate said earlier. Show them, not tell them. These guys said, show them, don't just tell them. So you need to become the resource for this. If I stop right now and just say, guys, become the resource for information for everybody that you know in the real estate business, do you think you'd do more business? Substantial amount more. Okay? So this is part of the story. Okay? Here's more of the story. Active listing count. Let's see, there's less inventory. People have been buying up houses, so what happens to inventory levels? Okay, this is a trek that we're currently on. Okay, so you might say, okay, cool, well, no big deal. Well, it's going to come back. Here's the fun part. In like 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21 got a little bit weird. 20 and 21 got a little weird for a couple of reasons. In a normal market, inventories always go substantially up in January and February. For the last 6-7 years, inventory stayed in a crapper in January and February. And it's like inventory usually goes up, right? And then you get into the buying season and people start buying up houses and the inventory drops down. And then June, July, August, September, June, July, and August are the highest closing months, right? Now it's just like the whole time. It's just going full throttle, full contact the whole time. Some stuff's moving over here. It's freaking me out.
Sorry, just me.
Okay, good. It's like, is that thing coming to get me? Yeah, you can see the corner. Okay, so active listing count. This is national stuff, guys. Is it important for you guys to know what's going on nationally? Yeah. Well, for two things. Number one is like, are we the same? Are we different? And you're just like, this is going on everywhere, guys. People are like, but you don't understand, Russ. Our market's different. No, it's not. Are there some individual markets that are doing things different? Yes. Are they getting a lot of press and making a ton of noise? Southern California, no matter what happens, they are the noisiest, whiniest. If it's good, it's like, ah! And when it's bad, they're like, ah! And then they put it on the national news, and everybody's thinking, oh, the whole market's crashing. Like house prices in some markets in Southern California went down. Some house prices in southern areas of Seattle and surrounding Seattle areas went down. Some in Portland, Oregon went down. Okay, the rest of the country, supplies are freaking stupid low. Okay, and the reason why is why. Remember how many houses were built? Okay, so that's part of the equation. The active listing count makes perfect sense when you start to know how many new households are being created every single year. Let's see here. Okay, so let's go facts versus fear. I want to make sure we're clear on what the facts are, okay? This is what's going on in the market, okay? 2012, what was the fear of the week, fear of the year, right? 2012, you guys remember this, 2012? Shadow inventory is going to come and get us. There's this lurking, looming boogeyman under your bed. Even if you look, it's still there. If you flip the lights on, look under your bed, and you can't see a boogeyman, don't worry. It's still there because he's in the shadows. Did you guys see shadow inventory? This massive glut of inventory that's going to pop into the market. Boom! No. Okay, didn't happen. 2013, higher mortgage rates. I think they actually went down the next 3 years, by the way. I refied at 2 3/8. Not too long after higher mortgage rates was announced a bunch. QE ending in October. Nobody even knows what that means. 2015, there's going to be a manufacturing recession. It's going to cave in your head. Okay? 2016, home prices got back to the bubble high. That's when you started here. Bubble, 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 bubble. We should put some bass to that. Right? Do that on the video. It's like bubble, 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 bubble. Okay? Do a dance groove to that. All we heard is freaking bubbles everywhere. I'm laying in a bath with warm water and all these, and I'm going like, I like bubbles. Bubbles are great, right? I'm like, you can't have a freaking bubble at a 0.7 month supply of homes. And people are like, well, but yes, you can. I'm like, no, explain to me how that makes any sense. You have supply that is stupid low. You got a bunch of buyers that want to buy houses. So, okay, so what happens in 2016, 17, 18? You get a little burst of homes that come on the market, and the buyers come in and go, suck them right back up, drop it right back down to 0.7. Bubble, okay? 2017, be afraid. Why? No good reason, just be afraid. 2018, 5% mortgage rates. Oh my gosh, it's a start. It's going to have 5% mortgage rates. Mortgage rates are coming to get you, right? And they stayed low. 2019, home price growth was cooling off. What are they looking at and what are they smoking before they look at it? That's the question of the day. 2019, COVID-19 is going to destroy everything and kill the world. 2021, mortgage forbearance is going to, when these people have to start paying their mortgage again, it's going to collapse the market. Did you guys hear that one? Yeah, it didn't happen. Okay, 2022, 7% mortgage rates are going to make inventories go through the roof. Nobody's going to buy a house. My first interest rate was 7.25, and I was thrilled to get it. When I refied to 6.5, we thought we hit the lottery. Okay, so guys, it's just a matter of readjusting to the new norm. And after a year or so, the people that weren't in the market come back into the market, and they're like, "What's the interest rate?" And they're like 6.5, and they're like, "Okay." It's the ones that were looking at 3s and didn't do what they were supposed to do and didn't do it because you didn't tell them how important it was and they didn't understand the importance of doing it now versus waiting. And then they didn't do it, and then they've seen their same $300,000 house now cost them $800 more a month, and now they have to drop down to $200 to have the same house payment, and a $200,000 house looks like a piece of crap compared to 3. And they're pissed. And eventually they're going to get to the point where they're like, well, I got to do what I got to do. You got to buy something, right? So they're readjusting. 2023, historically low housing demand. Not the truth, okay? So here's a fun one. Here's the facts, guys. In October of 2015, the biggest headline was a bubble larger than 2006. Houses appreciated 5.1% that year. 2016, we're in a new housing bubble, 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 bubble. 5.4%. I love 17. Home ownership doesn't build wealth, studies find. 6.1%, it went up. So on a $200,000 house, that person got a free $12,000. Doesn't build wealth. I don't know what that means really, because that's the exact opposite of what's going on, but okay, cool. But this is what the market is hearing. This is what your consumers are hearing. And if you guys don't have the ability, so let me show you this real quick. This is when they were saying bubble, this is what happened. So you're like, you think there's gonna be a bubble? Well, this is what's happening when they say bubble. So you guys have heard the thing, it's like figure out what the masses are doing and do the opposite. Figure out what the masses are doing and do the opposite, because the M a lot of times is silent. Okay, so 2019 housing market is about to shift in bad ways for buyers. Still went up 4%. Here's the fun one. In 19, they're saying it's going to shift in bad ways. Watch this. I don't know what bad ways means to you, but it's a little different than what I think it is. 2019, next year will be hard on the housing market, especially in these big cities. Property values went up 16%. Bad for buyers. Okay. 2021 housing boom is over. 18% appreciation. Okay. Here's the rest of the story. Home prices turning higher. This is 2013, 2023 we paced for about 7%. I think it finished around 6-ish or so, and I haven't seen my perfect authority for that. So here's the rest of the story. You go, okay, well, what does that mean? Okay, so here's the rest of the story and why this potentially becomes a problem. Easy for me to say. Potentially becomes a problem. 2023, going to mid-2023, 2.1 million new households created in a 12-month span. 2.1 million. Okay? 2.1 million new households created. So you might say, okay, well, Russ, that's cool. So I'm going to teach you guys a really, really important lesson. Don't just say 2.1 million. Don't just give people a statistic. Don't just give them a number. You have to give them a number, some type of context, and then you have to tell them what it means. So let me show you how typical people will go. And we see this in the mortgage business too. But Brad, the mortgage people do this all the time. They're like, interest rates are blah, blah, blah. And they're like, okay, great. Is that up? Is that down? Is that sideways? Is that good? Is that bad? I don't know. Interest rates are up 0.25%. Like, what does that mean? That means on a $300,000 house, it's going to cost you 43 more grand over the next 30 years. So if you want to get off the fence, now would be a good time. Oh, completely different way of phrasing it, right? So 2.1 million new households created. So how many houses were built in that same time period? If you knew that, then you'd know if this is a good thing, okay? 2.1 million households created, and there was 4 million houses built during that period. Would that be good? Yeah, because that means inventory would go up, right? The problem is there was only 800,000 homes built in that 12-month span, which means we're 1.3 million more homes in the hole in that 12-month span. So does that mean inventory is going to go up? Inventory's going to stay low. Okay, so now that you know that part of the equation, you're just like, okay, so that means inventory is going to stay low, probably, unless we get a lot of influx of new builds, a massive influx of new builds. Just to catch up in last year, we need to be 1.3 million above what a normal year would be. Does that seem likely to happen, that they're going to build an extra 1.3 million? They're going to go from 800,000 to 2.1 million homes built in the next? No, they're not, right? And by the way, new households are being created currently. Don't even get me started on immigration. Well, I'm just going to rent, Russ. I'm just going to rent. Okay, brilliant. Rent's gone up 6.5% in last year. So not only are you not investing any dollars in yourself, even if house prices don't go up $1 over the next year, you're paying currently $2,000 a month in rent. So let me ask you this. Would you like the opportunity to maybe or maybe not make some money, or a guaranteed $24,000 loss? Guaranteed. Which one would you take? Like, well, maybe I should rethink this renting thing. Okay, so we've got to start having conversations with people and making it make sense for people, so that when we do bump into that person that wants to talk about houses and are like, what are you doing currently? If I'm renting, great. But I'm afraid that house values are going to go down. Okay, great. So if you buy a $200,000 house and that house goes down $10,000 in the next year, is that a problem for you? And they're like, yes, absolutely. What if it went down $15,000 in the next year? Yes, that's a problem. What if it went down $20,000 in the next year? I feel like I'm on The Price is Right.
Lower, Russ, lower.
Do you see how we can start to tell a story versus just talking at them? Okay, so here's the rest of the story. Okay, so if $20,000 down is a big deal and you're paying $2,000 a month rent, that's $4,000 better than what you're currently doing. Our ability to tell a story that makes sense, and our ability to consult with people and communicate with people in a manner that helps them actually understand what they really should be doing in their best interest. Even if the house went down $15,000, you're still 10 plus ahead. Does that make sense? And now the buyer starts to go, well, gee, now that you put it like that, Do you see how knowing this information and knowing what's going on in the market is super key for you guys? So that when you get into these casual conversations, you go from casual conversation to having the ability for somebody to say, now that you did that, maybe I should really seriously look at that. Not all of them are going to do it, and you don't want to convince anybody to do anything, but I've had way more than one time where somebody said, if I had known that, I would have made a different decision. Hold on. I say that about every week. If I had known that, I probably would have made a different decision. There's times in life when we kick ourselves over the things we did or didn't do. Anybody should have bought Bitcoin a couple years ago? Okay, so with that being said, you've got these things, and now that I know that, does it change what I'm doing? Yes, okay? So here's one of the other ones coming along. Foreclosures are at all-time lows. It's gonna go right back up, okay? So here's what happened, that foreclosure boom that was coming, everybody's talking about foreclosures are going out of the roof. It went back up a little bit. It's not even close to normal averages. If it quadrupled, the foreclosure rates quadrupled, it would still be below the national average over the last 30 years. Okay, so are you guys worried about foreclosures ruining the market? By the way, if a bunch of foreclosures came into the market, it'd be the best thing that could happen. Increased supply, right? The problem is those people that are living in those houses have to go somewhere else, so you're net zero, right? Okay, so let's get into some of the fun stuff. I thought that was fun myself, okay? So here's some of the fun stuff. Americans are sitting on a tremendous amount of equity. So 38.7% of people own their house free and clear. Cool, huh? 30% of people have equity in their house at greater than 50% of the house value. 31% of people have a house that has less than 50. So you've got 68.7% of people in this market that in the markets nationally that have either a house completely paid for or more than 50% equity in the house. Does that change what their ability to do things is and are? Yes. Okay. Here's more to the story. Average loan to values of homes, 2008, 81% loan to value. Means on a $200,000 house, they owe 160. 2022, 42%. On a $200,000 house, they owe 84. Which means they have $100 and something thousand in equity. I'm not a mathematician, that's why I have Brad. You want the math? He'll do it. So what does that mean? What that means is that if you've got people in the market and you're talking to people, there's conversations that we can have, and there's things that we can do, and there's things that we can say that we can get people to start saying, you know what? There are actually options. Because what's the current thing going on in the market? When Jason asked earlier, what's going on in the market? Somebody said, interest rates. Like, okay, cool. So that's the thing. You got this noise going. It's like interest rates are up, nobody's going to buy. Interest rates are up, nobody's going to buy. Interest rates are up, nobody can sell. So when the average person in the market is saying that, and the average market consensus is that if we shift our conversation and start showing people a potential way, how do we change the conversation? How many of you guys believe if you look and smell and sound like everybody else in the industry, you're going to really stand out and people are going to choose you? So I've got to start doing things that make me stand out. And number one, should I be communicating this information in small chunks and nuggets? Yes, because what happens is we start building credibility. Okay? So let me ask you guys, if I stop right now, do I sound like an expert? Yeah. She's like, nope. I don't know what it's going to take to impress you, but let me know. Write a list, okay? Just write me a list, and I will improve for next time I come, okay? Good, thank you. Always freaking Siskel and Ebert sitting up here. Yeah. Kidding. So guys, we gotta change the narrative, right? We gotta change the narrative in our head first. This is a tough market. Well, it is if you don't know this stuff. It is if you're not communicating this stuff. It is if you're not actually being able to have a conversation with a buyer and a seller and they go, that makes sense. Okay, guys? What I want you guys to do is I don't want you to sit down with every person you talk to and when they're like, how's the market? And you're like, let me show you. And you do a 40-minute presentation on what's going on in the market. Don't do that, right? But there are a bunch of parts and pieces and nuggets in here that you guys can utilize and you guys can pull out to help people make sense, right? So what do you think about doing? Let's have a conversation, okay? So in this one, there's a couple of narratives that we can tell that make sense. So let me show you a little bit more of the story, and then I'm going to show you guys how to communicate in this market so you get people to come to you and want to buy and sell houses with you, okay? Here's part of the rest of the story. Non-housing debt balance. So you're like, well, Russ, these people have all this equity in the house. Yes, they do. How many of them have a lot of debt? Debt is going up. Look at the debt in U.S. American debt is going up by the year quickly, right? Credit card debt, auto loan debt, student loan debt, personal loan debt is going up. Okay, so what that means is that is part of the story. Okay, so let me ask you guys a question. If I had a seller and I said to a seller something like this, if you could make a move with your house and it was affordable and within your budget and it made sense for you to do it financially, would you move right now? Do you get anybody would put their hand up for that? Yeah. You think? Okay. So let me start thinking like not just a house sale person. Let me start thinking like a financial person. Now I'm not giving you financial advice. I don't want to be a financial advisor. But as a real estate agent, one of the things that I learned is that people have a lot of other debt. And if we could put together a scenario where you more likely have a lot of equity in your house, if we could put together a scenario where you can sell the current house you have, pay off that debt, get into a new house, the new house has a higher interest rate, but your cost per month is very, very similar, would you do that? Because if they can pay off $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in credit card debt, which is $700 and $800 a month, they pay $700 or $800 a month more in their mortgage, but their credit card debt is gone. They're net zero for the month. So if it's $4,000 a month for you to do your stuff, and you move into the new house and it's still around $4,000, or maybe even $41 or $42 or $43 or $4,400 a month, would people do that? Because what they're thinking is, my mortgage is going to go up $800, but my credit card debt went to zero. So we got to start talking blended rates. So what you need to do is you need to have a mortgage person like Fairway or the Woods or the Pond or the Rough, Schenker's Mortgage, any of those you need to have so somebody can sit down and have a conversation about blended rate. So Brad, can you have a conversation about blended rate with people and talk about their equity and taking that equity and putting it in a better place so that when they buy the house, their net dollars are very affordable for them? Are there times when you sit down with people and you start walking through that? Because I talked to him earlier and asked him if he does this, and he said yes, thank God. Otherwise, it'd be like, don't use Brad, he's an idiot. But he actually does this. Are there times when you take people and you say, instead of taking that money and putting it into the next house, let's pay off some of your debt and then put the rest of the money into the house, and their numbers are not that far off? Absolutely. Are some of them actually ahead by paying that debt off and having a higher interest rate on their house? So all I heard is there are opportunities out in the market that you guys could have to be not just the real estate person, but to be the person that's helping them make good business decisions in their life. So I think we as real estate agents a lot of times are like, but I'm just the realtor. I just deal with the house. The buying and selling of the house, right? But the financing of the house is an important component. So the marketing piece goes something like this. If you could, would you? If you could move into a different house and it made sense financially, would you? If you're saying yes to that, I have a solution for you. Reach out to me. Do you see how now I've got people putting their hands up that are wanting to do something? Can they do something today? Maybe, maybe not. But if I put them in front of Brad, Brad's going to sit down and say, okay, well, you have $130,000 equity in this, and you have $40,000 in debt, and you want to buy that type of house. And in order to have a payment that makes sense for you, here's what that looks like. Now, do you want to do it or not? If they're not ready to do that or it doesn't make sense, they're like, okay, it doesn't make sense now, but maybe in the next year, if you do this, this, and this, it would make sense. Maybe if you take some of that equity out of your house and pay off that debt, and then you're paying a 6 or 7% interest rate on that versus paying 25%, you actually have more dollars in your pocket, which actually gets you in a better spot to be able to do what you want to do. So you give them options, but you're going to have him and leverage him and somebody like him to be able to make sure that they know what their options are, and then you become their consultant. You're not just a real estate agent. I'm your real estate consultant. My job is to help you make good decisions regarding real estate. Part of that is that mortgage component. And if you're not having your people talk blended rate, you are in trouble. Okay? Good? All right. So, a couple numbers that are important for you. 0.25%, 0.8 to 1.2, 10%, 63%. On the bottom of this page is my recipe for doing and building a referral business. Have you guys ever seen a plan that's so complicated it's got to work? That's as complicated as I can make it. Okay, here's how the recipe reads. Plus people equals plus houses. equals plus cash equals plus people that send me more houses that make me more cash. This is a referral business. So what a lot of people do is they forget this part and they throw a dollar sign in here and they say plus cash equals plus houses equals plus cash equals plus people. So if I go out and spend a shit ton of money, I can do more house sales. They're playing that leverage game as like, I'm going to go out and buy leads, okay? Do you guys know how many houses were sold last year? Do you know? Total, national? Right around 4 million. Okay, a couple varying numbers on that, between 3.9 and 4.02 are the numbers that I've seen, right around 4 million. Do you know what a normal year is? 5.5, 6 a year? Yeah, okay. 5.5 and 6 is fairly normal, right? So that means we had 1.5, conservatively, 1.5 million less closings in the last year. Does that mean realtors are getting less sales? Less commission checks? Yeah. So we need to start thinking, okay, if that's the case, then I need to start shifting what I'm doing. So what happens is people go, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase my ad spend. So people are spending money. Now, listen, guys, I'm not saying don't spend money on leads. I'm not saying don't spend money on anything. I'm just simply saying that let's spend our money on the right stuff first. And then if you've got some extra cash, you want to throw it at something that covers and converts at 0.25%, knock yourself out. Okay, so 0.25%, that is the ratio of closing in the first 30, 60, 90 days of most leads generated online. So let me give you an example so that makes more sense. I'm gonna make you feel something. Any of you guys ever done lead generation stuff before and chase leads? Yeah. So based on that statistic, that takes 400 people to get to one close. Anybody ever done lead generation, felt like they're banging their head against the wall? Anybody ever done lead generation, you're like, these leads are crap? I hear that it's all of them, right? The problem is they're converting at 0.25% in the first 30, 60, 90 days. Now, if you work them long term, that's the goal. The goal is you got to work them long term. So people say, but you just got to keep your head down and grind away. Okay? And if you keep your head down and you grind away, you can get conversion at 2 and 3 and 4% on these leads. And the problem is that's not accurate. Okay, so National Association of Realtors went out as a third party and started surveying. It's like, are you buying leads? And she's like, yeah. Are you tracking your results? Yeah. Great. What are your actual results? And which lead source are you using? And then just say, are you doing lead generation? Yeah, great. You're paying for leads? Yeah. Which one are you using? And are you tracking your results? Yeah. And what NAR came back with is, depending on what the lead source was, it was between a 0.8 and a 1.2 return on their investment over 12 months. So the problem is, guys, out in the market, the real estate agents are being sold a shiny object. You're like, ooh, a minnow I can eat. And they bite the minnow and they're chomp, right? And they're like, oh shit, it's attached to a line and there's a human over there. Gotcha. Okay, so we got these little lures going by us all the time, and they lure us into saying, well, if I could just spend that much money, it'll solve my problem. And what happens is it doesn't actually solve the problem, it makes it 1,000 times worse, because instead of focusing on building relationships and taking good care of people and making connections with real people, you're working on a bunch of people that don't have any connection at all. So I want you guys to start thinking, okay, well, great, Russ, that's cool, but like, how do you know lead generation doesn't really work? Well, the whole system is set up against you. Okay, so just one of these companies, it starts with a Z, rhymes with pillow. One of those companies sold, how many leads do you think Pillow Company sold last year? 17 million. It's in their public report. 17 million. Okay, so they sold 17 million leads for 4 million closings national. Oh, but wait. All 4 million didn't come from Zillow. Those closings that sold last year, those weren't all Zillow. So how many closings actually do you think happened because of Zillow out of those 4 million? Even if they had a 10% market share, which would be huge, that would be 400,000. So they sold 17 million leads for 400,000 closings on a good day? Do you guys understand why when real estate agents get into doing this lead generation thing, it's like, it's a numbers game and you feel like you're banging your head on the wall? You know, there's one good thing about banging your head against the wall. You know what it is? Stopping. It's the only good thing, okay? 10%. You should be able to convert your sphere at 10%. Now that number has dropped substantially because you've got typical Americans moving every 6 years. And now they're moving every 10 years, which means getting a 10% close rate, which is a normal close rate for sphere of influence, is actually not as possible just because of the nature of the beast. So do you have to have a little more people to be able to get the same amount of closings? Absolutely. But that's a very easy solvable problem. Okay? So let's say horrifying, your sphere of influence only going to close at 5%. If you could spend 40 hours a week to get a 1% closing ratio, or 40 hours a week to get a 5% closing ratio, which one should you be spending your time on? You could say it out loud. It's okay.
Spend it on your sphere.
So, you guys have heard people say this over and over and over and over and over. You got to work your sphere, 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 right? You've heard it over and over and over. And the next time somebody says that, you got to look at them and be like, how? Show me how, right? Do you guys understand now, knowing those numbers and those metrics? Does that make you like, I could tell you, work your sphere, and you're like, I know. But now you know. See, I didn't just tell you work your sphere. I said,
Showed it.
nice. Thanks. You're welcome. He's shooting a selfie. I was photobombing his selfie. You got to have fun with it. If you guys, does it look like I'm having fun? Yeah, okay. So if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong, okay? So what you need to do is you need to say, okay, now that I know that, now that I know the numbers and the facts that go behind it, now knowing that, for you to do anything other than work your sphere, number one, as your primary source of business would be malpractice. It's like, if I know this drug will fix that problem and I don't prescribe it, I'm probably going to go to jail. Okay? So should you be working your sphere? Even at a 5% conversion, should you be working your sphere? Okay, so the next question I should be asking is what? How? Yeah, if I knew the answer to that, I wouldn't have to be here talking to you guys. Kidding. I'm going to show you a couple things you could do to work your sphere that'll make this actually convert, okay? The last number is 63%. This is an important one, guys. 63% of sellers surveyed, when asked, how did you find your realtor? They said, referral or sphere. How many of you guys want more listings? Where do listings come from? Most of the time, sphere, right? Okay, so with that being said, I think there's a ton of room for improvement. I don't think anybody should ever sell their house with somebody they don't know. I think everybody should always sell their house with somebody they know, like, and trust, and they know they're going to do a good job for them. Because we've done the right stuff, and we've told the story, and we've been the resource for them to understand that I am the expert. So if I go out into your market here and start talking about that information in the market consistently on social media, instead of saying, look at me and my giant stupid key, I just sold a house, I'm going to start doing market date information so people start to see me as an expert, not see me as a panhandler. Okay, so I want you guys to start thinking, how do I look like an expert, sound like an expert, talk like an expert, show up on social like an expert, and when I'm riding my mountain bike, I look like an expert, sound like an expert, talk like an expert, and then I can add value after the fact when they go, how's the market? I can add value. Now I become their expert. And when I become their expert, what happens? When it's time for them to sell a house, or one of their friends says, oh man, I'm thinking about selling my house, and they're like, you gotta come to this guy Justin, it's great. This guy Jason is great too. This guy Nate is great. By the way, I call him Justin all the time because it's funny. I did that one on purpose, by the way. Steve is amazing. I know. I told him last night, we're changing his name whether he likes it or not. I submitted the form this morning. That's why I was slow getting here. It's like being married to a new guy. Like, is this your second marriage? No, it's just Jason. He likes to go by Justin now. You're like, wait a minute, is that one of the? No, that's not that. That's different. Okay, so sphere of influence, okay? So we got to start working sphere of influence. Good? So here we go. Okay, number one, relationships. Relationships are the most important part of the business. Okay, 11:15. We're rocking and rolling, okay? Relationships are the most important part of this business. Everything you should be doing should be thinking about, how do I build a better, bigger, stronger, more lasting relationship? Any of you guys have a significant other in your life? Yeah. If you just communicated with them on Facebook, would your business be better, and would your life be better, and your relationship be better? Anybody that says yes, you should get divorced. I'm just getting it out there, right? Because you're like, no, I think that would be great. It's like, if you traveled all the time, would that be better for your relationship? If the answer is yes, you're probably married to the wrong person. Okay?
You're right.
My wife misses me when I'm gone, thankfully. Okay? So when you're looking at relationships, and we talk about relationships as real estate people and as business people, the problem with building relationships is most of the time we're building the relationships and we're going out there trying to get something from them. right? Because I'm trying to get a lead. I'm trying to get a sale. I'm trying to get a house. I'm trying to get a listing. I'm trying to get a buyer. I'm trying to get. If you approach the significant other relationship that you have like that, where you're trying to get all the time, is it going to be a good relationship? It's going to end. It's going to end horribly, right? Okay, guys, I've been married 30 years in August.
Really? You got married at that?
All, yes, all to the same woman. You got to clarify that, right? I mean, 30 years, you're like, that's got to be like 5, right? All to the same woman, right? Got married in 1994. I got it tattooed on my wrist, right? So just so I don't forget it. Married in 1994. And by the way, guys, if I approach the relationship, people are like, how do you build a relationship like that? I approach the relationship and how do I give and how do I add value and how do I give to her consistently? I don't just try to get. Thank you. Yeah. So when I approach every relationship is what can I give to this relationship? What can I add to this relationship? What value can I add? A lot of times, guys, it's not the big stuff. Like, I don't have to buy my wife a fancy ring. Thank God. I don't have to buy my wife a fancy house. Thank God. Now, if a greyhound goes strolling through the neighborhood, we're taking that, right? That one's coming to my house, right? But if it's not a stray dog, like, that's not the stuff, right? It's the making her feel like she's seen and heard and safe. It's the making them feel like she knows she's my favorite person in the world. Because of my travel schedule, with as much as I'm out and about, and then I go out and I like shoot selfie pictures, and I got a picture of Jason's wife and Teresa, and I'm standing there with a foot pose, and my wife's friends are like, "Are you okay with Russ hanging out with beautiful women all the time?" And they're like, "That's Jason's wife and Teresa. That's other people." And they're like, "Why is he with other?" My wife, it doesn't even cross my wife's mind because she knows she's my favorite person in the world, and I cannot wait to get home to her. Do we irritate the shit out of people or each other sometimes? Yes, right? No relationship is perfect, business or physical or whatever, right? No relationship is perfect, but you got to figure out how do I continue to add value to this, right? So if I'm adding value to this relationship, then the relationships get better and better and better. And as real estate agents, we're always trying to get stuff instead of give stuff. When we start giving stuff, we're going to find that we get way more. Guys, you want to be married 30 years and have a happy marriage? Try to treat your woman better than she treats you. You're going to lose and win. Okay? Build credibility is super important. Give, not get. Become their expert. Leverage your slow time, because right now, guys, you got a little bit less sales. You should be investing in building the base of the business. Sit back and be like, I'm kind of glad it's slow because now I can rebuild this the right way because I have time. When things are flying, you don't have time. Okay? So here's 3 recipes. Ready? It's like, how do I actually do this? Okay? Number 1, most important thing, market update. Okay, market update is the most important. Oh, that's a flip chart marker. Okay, so flip chart markers don't work on these. Oh, that's going to be worse. Hold on, let me clean that off. So market update is one of the most important things that you could possibly have in your real estate market repertoire. And the reason you want to have that in your repertoire is because if you don't have that in your repertoire, other people are giving them bad information. If you think I travel without a backup marker, check this out. Always be prepared. By the way, if you use a permanent marker, use a permanent marker on a whiteboard. You know what you can do with the whiteboard when you're done? By the way, here's permanent marker. Check this out. You guys will love this. Here's my permanent markers. Okay? If I use this on that board, you get to throw that right out of the window into the garbage. So don't use the wrong marker on the right board, okay? Market update is the most important thing you guys could possibly have in your repertoire, and here's the reason why. When you're out and about and you're riding a mountain bike and you're bowling and you're goofing off and doing things, you probably are into quilting. You just look, no, I'm kidding. What are you into? She's like, MMA. I like punching people in the face. She's like, I don't know. Too bad.
I don't know, my kids, I guess.
Okay, cool. So we can, cool, right? Super unfair advantage. I don't have any children. So it's really weird if I'm hanging around the soccer field now, people call the cops. Like, I just like to play on the playground myself, okay? Because I'm a giant child, and they're like, why is that 52-year-old dude playing on the playground all the time? So your children, leveraging your children. So when you're out and about and you're at a soccer game and the kids are hanging out and doing their thing, and you're standing there with the parents and they're like, hey, well, what do you do? And you say, I'm a realtor, right? And then what do they ask you after that?
Yeah, usually what's going on in the market.
Yeah, right?
Crazy out there.
Yeah. Yes, it is, right? And all the information they're getting is bad, right? So shouldn't you get really great at converting that? Because that's a lead. Okay, so we got to get really great at converting that. So here's how we shift. Most people say, how many of you guys have been taught you got to have an elevator pitch? Yeah, you got to have an elevator pitch. So when somebody asks you how's the market, you got to have an elevator pitch. Rob taught me how to have an elevator pitch. Went something like this. Russ, when dude, when you're out there and you're like doing your thing, somebody's going to look at you like, hey, what do you do for a living? And you're like, you're a real estate agent, right? And like the next thing you do, they're going to house the market. Thank you. They're going to house the market. And then what you got to do, you got to have an elevator pitch, right? And then we went through about 100 different itinerations of elevator pitches, and I learned it, like, I got to have this elevator pitch, right? And I started realizing like I had this elevator pitch and I had like 18 different varieties of it, right? Because like, well, my job as a real estate agent is to help sellers get top dollar for the house and help buyers get the house of their dreams. Like, that one's actually not that bad. Yeah, that's not that bad, right? The problem is when somebody asks you a question and then you do an elevator pitch, it's a sales pitch, right? So when somebody asks you a question and the next thing you do is pitch them, try to get something from them, because the ultimate goal of doing an elevator pitch is what? To get their information, right? So ultimately, I go into this business and this interaction and I'm trying to get something from somebody. And if I go into an interaction trying to get something from somebody, how does that normally work? Yeah, so if I go into the relationship trying to get something, I'm going to get nothing. Most of the time. So how many of you guys have an elevator pitch that's really good? Nobody's going to put their, oh, you do? It's like nobody ever puts their hand up because they're like, tell me what it is. I'm not going to do that to you. If you put your hand up, I would have done it to you though. Okay, so just saying, Ebert. Okay, so the reality is this, guys. We do this elevator pitch, and how many times in the usage of an elevator pitch somebody looked at you and said, "Oh, tell me more." Never happens, right? Or let me give you all of my personal information. Now that you said that, oh, that's amazing. I'm going to give you all my info. You're obviously a guru. Okay, you got a better shot at being guru than me. Just saying. Okay. So with that said, let's shift the conversation, right? So when somebody asks me, how's the market? Here's how I'm going to answer the question now. People ask me that all the time. I just did a market update yesterday that tells people what's going on in the market. You want me to send it to you? And they say what? Yes. And then they say, cool, let me give you and then they want to give me their info. Great, give me your info and I'll send it to you. See, if I approach the relationship with give first, what happens? Do people want to give me something back in return? So you've got this law of reciprocity. It's the way human beings work. When I do something nice for you, you naturally want to do something nice for me. If I had a flat tire in my rental car out in the parking lot, somebody here would probably be happy to help me do it because I've helped you guys a little. You'd probably be more likely to help me do it. Not her. She'd just laugh and drive away.
She'll be the first one there.
She's tougher than I am. I'd let her do it probably. Okay, so with that said, when I start saying, how do I give in all of these interactions, then I'm going to get way more, okay? So would you guys like to see exactly how to do that? Okay, I have a video that tells exactly how to do that. If you guys don't want to be here for 7 more hours, I've got a video on exactly how to do that, and I'll tell you how to get that so you can watch that and say, okay, I'm going to build that into my life. Do you guys see and understand the importance of having a good real estate market update? It allows me to go out and do things that are fun, and when somebody says, how's the market? Now I have a way to convert them. So now I can intentionally go out into the market and say, okay, well, 3 times a week, I'm going to go out and do something that's fun. And in the process of riding a mountain bike, we get stopped and we're having a beer after mountain biking, which is the great part about mountain biking, by the way. The road bike guys, they shave their legs, they talk about Nair, and they drink protein shakes after bike rides. The mountain bikers crack a beer. Okay? Find your tribe. That's all I'm saying. Okay? So I've got 3 times a week I'm going out mountain biking, and what happens is I stop after mountain biking, I'm having a beer, and Gary Ewell, true guy, right? Gary Ewell says, how's the market? I'm like, yeah, dude, I just did a market update on that yesterday. You want me to send it to you? He's like, yeah, dude, cool. I send him the market update, and I follow up with him. I say, hey, man, did you get the market update thing? He's like, yeah, I did. As a matter of fact, I did. My daughter wants to buy a house. True story. Okay, so if I can do that and I can get 5 people that I add into my sphere of influence every week doing things that I enjoy and being intentional with this, that's 20 people in a month. That's 240 people in a year, which means at a 10% conversion rate, that would be 24 more sales just from building that. Or at, let's say, half-ass version, that's 12 more sales in the next year. How many of you guys would like to have 12 more sales in the next year by going out and doing things that are fun? Okay. Now do you see a path that's possible and doable? Could you guys do that? Let's be really clear. If you're not willing to do that and you need more business, get a job somewhere else. Almost every other plan you guys have is going to be way harder than doing this. Literally go out and intentionally meet people, hang with people. So I go to Hole in the Fence at 6 p.m., which basically is a thing on the side of the road, and there's a fence, and there's a gap, and you go through it with your bicycle into a bunch of trails. And you know what they call it? Hole in the Fence. It's a great name, okay? And then I also go to Croom, and I go to Santos, and I go to Alafaya, and I go to all these different places, and there's 30, 40, 50, 60 people that show up. And then when they do a work day, there's 50, 40, 50, 60 people doing it. And I go and hang out and help build the trails, and I get to meet people. I'm hanging out, we're shoveling dirt. Like, hey man, how you doing? What do you do for a living? And he's like, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, what do you do for a living? Funny you ask. Beep, beep. Away we go. Okay, so that's recipe number one. Second recipe is building a contractor list. Okay, does everybody live in houses? Do all your sphere of influence live in houses? If the average American's moving every 10 years, but 4 things break on a house every year, you have 40 times more contact by running and managing a professional contractors list. Would you guys like to see a recipe on exactly how to build out a contractors list and how to manage that? And you can add somewhere in the range of 382 people to your sphere of influence just building out a preferred contractors list and becoming a resource. So what happens is when something breaks on their house, they don't call and go wander around. They call me because they know I know everybody and they know I've got a managed contractor list. So if 4 things break on their house every year, they move every 10 years, I've got 40 times more contact with them and 40 times more touch and 40 times more being needed than if I'm just needed once every 10 years. I'm needed 4 times a year. If you have 40 times more touch when it's time for them to sell their house, do you think you're going to become their person? Yep. So you got to start managing contractor list. I'll show you a video on how to do that and the recipe on how to do that. Would you guys like that too? Okay, good. Number 3 is social media done right. So instead of us going out, look at me, I'm a realtor, I'm going to start doing social media with real estate market update on a monthly basis, tells people what's going on. And instead of me promoting myself, I'm promoting contractors. So by the way, there's contractors at my house right now working on some plumbing stuff. I have no idea how it's going. I don't even care. I don't want to know. I hope it's done before I get home. Okay. Hey, Russ, they got a real quick question. No, that's not going to end well. Okay, I'm not a plumber. It's like, that's what they're getting paid for. Let them have it. Okay, stay out of the way. I know 2 things I don't touch. Painting and plumbing. Okay? Starts with a P, I'm out. Okay? So I'm gonna make sure I'm doing social media. So if I was at my house and they did a good job, I'm gonna do a social media post. Hey, I'm Russ the real estate dude, and Plumber Joe and Plumber Jack just came over. And good news is both of them kept their pants pulled up, they showed up on time, they were nice, and they communicated well, and they got the job done. So if you need a plumber who keeps his pants pulled up at fair price, call Plumber Jack and Crack, or whatever his name's. So I'm Russ, the real estate dude, doing things that are promoting other people's businesses. And do they find out I'm still a real estate dude? Yes, but I'm a real estate dude promoting other people's business. If I'm promoting other people's business versus promoting myself, they're going to like me a lot more. Okay? If I get on social media, I'm like, look at me, I'm a real estate agent, I'm amazing, I'm adorable, look at me, I've got a vest. So does Jason. So does Justin. Okay, so I look like every other dipstick self-promoting. So if I tell you how great I am, you're going to think I'm an ass. If somebody else tells you how great I am, you're going to think I'm pretty good. So if I tell other people how great other people are, they're going to like me because I'm telling you how good somebody else is. They're going to automatically like me. This is the way humans work. Guy walks into the bar, walks up to the woman, tells her how great he is. She's like, ugh. Woman walks into a bar. Her friend looks over and said, hey, have you met that Nate guy? He's super amazing. Such a nice guy, family dude. It's just a good dude. She's going to say, maybe I'll talk to him. And Teresa's going to be like, you touch my man, I will kick your ass. Have you seen, she's tall too. She could probably fight. Okay, so, all right, so these are the things you need to do, okay? So here's the thing, guys. What I want you to do is I want to give you something, and this is no extra charge. All you got to do is just register because you need to register to get into the stupid thing. It's jumpstartmasterclass.com, okay? Got it? Jumpstartmasterclass.com. J-U-M-P. Start. I know it's long. Should have started further to the left. Jumpstartmasterclass.com. If you go to jumpstartmasterclass.com, you can actually register in there. I've got 8 modules in there that tell you guys how to do these 3 recipes extremely well. And if you just follow those 8 recipes or those 8 modules and just build the sphere of influence business, what you're going to find is your conversion is going to start going through the roof. If you guys could commit to being all in and building your business over the next 12 months, would you do that? For the next 12 months, focus only on doing these 3 recipes consistently and well, and you're going to find your business is starting to come to you and your conversion is going to go through the roof. And by the way, the people that are doing just this are converting at way better than 5% in this market. So do you need to go out and spend $1,000 a month on leads? You guys didn't invest in yourself, okay? Be intentional, invest in yourself. Build your people with houses. More houses sell, we get more money. More people refer business to you, and now you got a business that comes to you doing things you love, like hanging out with your kids at soccer. Now you can leverage that. Good? It's in school, SKOOL. Yep, you register for school, that's how you get in, and then it tracks in there. There's nothing for sale, you don't have to pay anything, it's not asking for credit cards or anything. That's my version I put together just so I could have you guys have those recipes, because otherwise you gotta be here for 7 more hours for me to talk through the rest of that, okay? All right, that's all I've got. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.